when you have truly a mission-driven organization, it's very easy to make decisions, easier, I'd say, and it's easier to carry out that mission, and it's easier to sell somebody because you really are just looking at, can I provide value? Is it realistic? Is it achievable? Yes, yes, yes. Let's go.
What better way to let your team know that you respect them and trust them than by giving them projects, right? Like to test them and make sure that they're capable and helping them to grow, even before, like you said, before things hit the fan, right? So like you're continually, sounds like, testing them, but giving them responsibility to take on new projects and maybe even stretch themselves at times. Like, I think that's so motivating in itself. And I think that's a lot of times all people really want out of a job. Guys, super pumped to be interviewing Joy Shanaberger today. She is the CEO and founder, right? Of Boone Group. And Boone Group is essentially the evolution of a government contracting firm whose mission is to cultivate the rapid advancement for tech for the toughest missions globally. Did I get that right?
It's a mouthful, but yes, that's correct.
Cool. Yeah, just wanted to make sure. But Joy has an incredible story. She came highly recommended from so many people in the DC area that knows her. She's a leader, she's an entrepreneur, and she's a hustler. And so excited to learn more about her story and how she got to where she is today. And I think you guys are going to get a lot out of it. So to start, can you just tell us a tad bit about what Boone Group is first, and then we'd love to hear the story behind it and how you got into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So my partner and I started Boone about 3 years ago, and it was after we were both sitting next to each other in grad school, studying at GW, getting our MBAs focused on cybersecurity. And there's certain things in the intelligence community, certain wires that you'll get open source news from, but not everybody really knows where to find it, right? So all unclassified stuff, but it's kind of like a specialized Reddit. You can think of it like that. And so my partner, who I didn't know at the time at all, sitting right next to me, and we both get the same headline about a mission that went south because somebody didn't have the equipment that they needed in time.
What kind of mission?
A military mission.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So, at that moment, I looked at him. I'm like, who the heck is this guy? And where are you getting the same news that I do? Because it's like I curate my news very specifically. And so anyway, long story short, we bonded over the fact that we thought that there was a better way to scout, source, and field cybersecurity technology solutions for special operations and intelligence officers.
Wait, you had like that thought right then? You were like,
like all of a sudden,
we're just going to do this.
No, I'm being mindful of your time. So I kind of went over a big bridge there. That's my business partner actually just walked by and waved to us. So cool. That's nice. So anyhow, what happened was there's something in a special mission unit, right? Special operations. There's something called the communications guy or the commo guy. And that's the guy or gal that's running the radio. Software-defined radio works the same as your iPhone does, right? Meaning software update 10 ... is ready, and pushes the update. Well, software-defined radio kits don't work the same way because the government actually has to approve the software to be deployed. Okay. And so there's this big lag time in having code deployed and your radio updated. So this particular individual, their radio went out. They got caught in a pretty sticky situation, came back safely, thank goodness. But John and I, my founding partner, we kind of bonded in that moment and said, there's got to be a better way to do this. Now, was it a fault of big government? No. Was it a fault of that person not checking their radio kit before they went out? No, not necessarily. But when we founded Boone, we thought, okay, there's two things going on. One, there's amazing technology in the States that we can get to very particular missions in parts of the world to help bring people back safely. We can do it efficiently, we can do it safely, and oh, by the way, we can push the technological superiority of our country. So we founded Boone on that principle, which is a really tall order to make it easy for technology companies to do business with government. And then we proved it, and we're doing that, and we continue to build that today.
Gotcha. So you guys did this while you were students?
No, we had the idea while we were we had the idea while we were students. So we came to market. Really, year one was whenever you're building something, whether it's a company, organization, an idea, a lemonade stand, it doesn't matter. Testing is always really important, right? A lot of people, especially now, they look at startup culture as this like really sexy, amazing thing to do. And they're just all of a sudden like, oh, that's so cool. You own a company, or you own a nonprofit, or you're going to start a corner lemonade stand. It literally doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then you get there and you're like, oh shoot, this might not make sense as a company. Maybe it's a product. Maybe it's an idea. Maybe it's something that I just give to somebody else because I don't want to build all the infrastructure. I don't want to figure out what the lemonade mixture is. Like, that doesn't actually sound fun, right? Then the hard work starts happening.
Yeah.
So for us, year one was a gigantic experiment to test and make sure that Boone made sense as a company, and that we weren't doing too much, which we did at first. That was a big lesson. And that we could actually have a targeted offering focused to actually help people, not just drive revenue for tech companies, which is important because you have to build a business, but actually field solutions forward. That's our whole mission.
Wow.
So,
and what I've heard about you from other people is that you have like an incredible backstory that's really odd in some senses,
yes.
and it's helped bring you to this, right?
Yeah.
And so would love to hear a little bit more about that. And I know, again, from what we've said before, it sounds like it started in a restaurant, but there was some tie to Beyonce. We're just kind of, yeah.
There it is. I've tried to keep that hidden for years, so thank you.
Yeah, no longer. It's out in the open.
The grand finale for me.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time in the service industry, and honestly, it was by I don't know like what necessarily drove me to do that, other than I needed to make money. Like, I was putting myself through school. I didn't really know what to do. I went to 2 different community colleges, 1 state school, 1 art school before I landed on what I was meant to do. I put that in quotes for people listening, because it went from, chefing to dancing to photography to you name it. We can dig into whatever story in particular you're thinking of. But what I learned from that is that no one, no matter what, no one's going to come and make the path for you, right? They're just not. And so a lot of times people look at my life and they're like, oh my God, Joy, that's so amazing what you've done. Like, how did you get there? And the answer is, I just kept saying yes. And I kept putting one foot in front of the other. And if that was in a restaurant, my only intention was to be helpful. Like, oh, we're short a line cook. Cool, I'll learn that job. Oh, we don't know how to run a maitre d' program. Cool, I'll learn that job. Like, and I was always just, my intention was, how do I become helpful to this community that I'm in, wherever that was. And so saying yes and one foot in front of the other took me down a very, very diverse path, which eventually makes sense. And now I have a better narrative. People listening are getting like the inside scoops. It's going to sound a little random, and we'll wrap it up with a bow on top. But it took me a long time to figure out how to package me. And I for a long time too, almost apologized for being kind of a jack of all trades generalist. And then I realized that that's actually a really hard skill set, and one of the most high qualities of a leader, to be able to jump topics and jump people and be a chameleon and pull people together to achieve an outcome, whether that's, as a line cook, as a dancer, as a photographer, as a political fundraiser, whatever that is, that it's very, very applicable.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's a tremendous skill that most leaders need, right? Like, regardless of introvert, extrovert, or certain personality types, to be able to connect with each person on their level is important.
Yeah.
What happened after that?
Where did I pivot? Let's see. At some point, I don't think I actually shared the inside story. I stole is a really heavy word, I think. I borrowed my mom's car to drive to Chicago to audition to be a backup dancer for the one, the only Beyonce. By borrowed, I mean I didn't tell her. I took my friend. I drove there, stayed with my aunt. My mom called me 8 hours later wondering where her car was and where her daughter was. Oops. Yeah. Could have executed that a little bit better, right? So I stood out in line of the Hubbard Street Dance Studio is on Chicago's west side. And I stood in line for, 8.5 hours in February. And if you haven't been to Chicago in February, it tests you as a human. Okay. Your tears just kind of run down your face and freeze here. Anyway, so.
Wait, just how old were you when you were doing this?
20.
Okay.
20, 21.
Cool.
I don't think I was 21 yet. I think I was about 20. Yeah. So I'm, standing in line, we audition, a bunch of my friends went and a bunch of us made the final cut. Right. So I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like, I'm going to go on tour with the one, the only. Yeah, right. And I have a dancing background. This wasn't like, I didn't just like decide in that moment. I mean, I did, but I'd actually practiced my whole life for that moment, right? So anyway, long story short, I go home. I got in a lot of trouble from my mom. And then I tell her, you know, the great news, like, this is amazing. Like, I'm so excited, da, da, da. And she's like, she never told me no growing up. And that's not to say that she didn't discipline me. She did. But she was always a person who really believed in exploring by learning and growing, right? And always just like, oh, you want to try that? Do it. You want to try that? Do it. And this was the one time she didn't explicitly say, no, Joy, like, you're not going to go on tour. But she said, you know, I was thinking, and I was like, uh-oh, here comes some mom advice, right? She said, you know, I was thinking about this, and I think this is an incredible opportunity, and I would support you, and I do support you all the way, but is this really what you want to do? And she's like, I'm not asking because I don't want you to go. I want you to really think about this. Is this really what you want to do? And I was like, well, shoot, like, I don't know, but it sounds cool, you know? Anyway, so I did some introspective, you know, seeking in myself, and ended up not going on tour and doing a different performing arts group that still allowed me kind of the same opportunity to travel the world and dance and all these different things. But that moment that I went to Chicago to audition was the hook to get me back to Chicago. So I then ended up getting a scholarship to Columbia College and Art School as a dancer, and then ended up completely retooling my education to focus more in strategic communications, problem solving, public relations, political science type stuff.
So that was like maybe the birth of
Yeah.
this idea that you could eventually end up in the political arena or like tied to government somehow.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so. I think so. You know, I met with an advisor when I realized that, hey, I'm 21 years old. I'm a hip hop and modern dancer. I love it, but my career is going to be 10 years. Then what am I going to do? Like open a dance studio? Okay, that's amazing. I love that. But I knew that I wanted to do more than that. And I knew that I needed to level up my skill set and diversify myself in order to, and I didn't know what it was, right? I didn't know like what I was going to build or what I was going to do, but I knew I wanted to do something else, not solely focused on performing arts. And so that's where I had a chat with my advisor, and she gave me some of the best advice of my life, which was, you like people, you're smart, you'll figure it out one step at a time, go study communications, be a generalist, and everything else will make sense in about 10 years. And she was right.
You know, you're relatively young. You've had this bouncy ball in a grocery store sort of life and track, you know, like with Beyonce, with being a server and a line cook, making cannolis, and then being a political photographer. You know, I think that it's an exciting track that you've been on, but I'm also curious as to like how you got Boone to really take off.
We got a call from an advocacy group, and they said, hey, we're going to launch this tech company. We really would like your guys' help. We're like, what do we know about launching tech companies? Not really sure, but you know what? This is a perfect use case for us to test our theory for Boone. And so we ended up launching a company at the Forbes 30 Under 30 Summit a few years back. I was not the you know, person of honor, but we were helping this company build and go to market, and we did it successfully. So we proved out that what we do works there. And then I think separate from that, there's something that I apply to my life. This is, again, back to being helpful in any situation, that's my number one intent, called the canvas strategy. And some people probably heard it before. Basically, it's the artist is nothing without the canvas, right? And so as a human, in whatever experience you're doing, if you have the intent to clear the path for others and actually make room for the artist to do their work, you're in pretty good shape, right? And so I built my career after Chicago. I went to the White House, and then I went to the Pentagon, like really taking that to heart and clearing the path for anybody, no matter if they were a cabinet level, you know, employee of the president, to cleaning staff and anyone in between, right? Like clearing the path, getting the garbage cans, lining them out, saying thank you, asking their name. Like that goes back to my, you know, service background, all the way up to walking in and knowing, okay, sir, you need to know X and Y and Z because there's a problem in this part of the world right now that needs your decision, right? So I think that intent in a decade of doing that then automatically had me, my phone's talking to us right now. Anyway, so being mindful of that and having an intent there to do that actually had people want to buy me, Joy, when I left. And I said, I'm starting this company. We've tested out, you know, the methodology. Here's what we're set out to achieve. How can I help you? That's my first question. How can I help you? So the first year was just solving tough problems that weren't necessarily focused, which I wouldn't recommend people build a company, just being helpful, right? But we got our first customer from people wanting to buy me first and then buy John because of our backgrounds and what we had done to that point. The next hardest part was translating how do people not buy John and Joy because we trust them. They make our lives easier, better. They'll clear the path for us and they'll get it done. They'll run through walls. They'll take a train at 1 a.m. They'll fly to South Korea at the drop of a hat, like whatever that is, and translate that to buy Boone, buy the company, buy the people, buy the problem solving. And so that transition, I would say was the first level up of the company.
It sounds like your influence as far as Boone is concerned, and probably across the board in your life, comes from a truly genuine place. Like you're out there and your focus is to build a relationship and it's to solve a problem and it's truly just to help.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of the challenges that you've experienced, as you guys have grown? You mentioned it's become more challenging, but any specific examples come to mind?
Let me think. Well, there's a lot. I think that overall the biggest challenge is looking at, kind of going back from people buying me to buying Boone at scale, right? Kind of those three phases. The biggest challenge in my personal role is how do I translate what I do naturally that to some people looks like a very specific skill set. For me, it's just who I am. I'm like, oh, this is just how I solve problems. Obviously, this is logical. No. What makes a good leader is someone who can teach that. So knowing yourself, number one. Two, asking yourself, now how do I translate this into another human being and teach it? And then how do I ask questions to them where they, A, think that they're teaching me, one, and two, where they're actually teaching me and I learn something so that I can level up the company. And then, the last step is how do you then apply it and get someone to grow with you or buy it? And so I think that translation is one of the hardest things I've ever done because it's very easy, like knowing your default mode. My default mode when I am at my highest level of stress is to throw a peace sign, be like, bye, I got this. And I forget I have a team and I just solve it myself. Wrong thing to do. You don't grow that way, right? Every time we get to the next level of the company or have a new challenge that we don't know how to solve, or we have to get something in some part of the world and we have no idea how we're going to do it. The first question to myself is, okay, what's happening? What's not happening? How do I influence the outcome? What's happening? Well, we have this problem. What's not happening? I cannot in this moment run alone and solve it by myself. How do I influence the outcome? How do I take 40% of what I would solve by myself, push it down to other people to teach them, be okay that it's going to take them twice as long, twice as difficult, all these different things, and still back them up at the finish line, even if they did it differently and it went slower than I really wanted to. That translation and knowledge sharing is one of the most difficult things for a company to achieve. And you have to design it very specifically from processes to execution, and you also have to enforce it, right? So when my partners or other members of the company don't do that, my question always when they're going to solve, they come to me with a problem. Well, Joy, I have a blocker. That's what we call it. I have a blocker. Here's 3 courses of action that we can take. What do you think? My first question is, who else have you talked to about this? And who else have you relied on to help you solve it? And if the answer is no one, bye-bye. Try again, right? And so teaching people how to teach and distribute that power, no matter where they're at in the company, is probably the most difficult thing, but the most intentional thing that I've done so far.
I love that advice. Of when somebody comes to you asking them who else they've spoken with, right? To encourage the teamwork and encourage them to maybe be a little bit more resourceful on their own. Because ultimately that's going to help speed up the growth of the company, right? When people can solve problems on their own or with each other rather than bottlenecking everything. Exactly. Did you figure that out on your own, or did you read that somewhere, or do you have a business mentor?
I have many mentors in my life. Many mentors and many activities that I do to mentor me as well. I think that I talk to a lot of people that have scaled companies effectively and have also crashed and burned. And the advice that I was given was, Joy, it's going to take twice as long and it's going to be twice as difficult. And I was like, That's cute. Yeah, right. I'm gritty. I'm from Detroit. I can figure it out. Like I used to, back in Chicago, I was doing a lot of counter gang violence initiatives on the South Side. Like, I'm like, I've seen some stuff. I've been around the world. I got this, right? Womp womp. No, sir. Like, you actually need people to help you get there, right? And so I think that some books I've read definitely have resonated with me. I think most recently I read New Power, which is a fantastic read. If folks haven't read it, that's where the idea of distributed power really, really made sense to me mechanically. Like, I knew that was important, but I actually figured out the equation to replicate that in the company through that book. And so, yeah, I think that I'm taught. I look at every environment and every situation, even if it's a conversation at a coffee shop with the person in front of me for 10 seconds, like, what can I learn from that? Like, what does that mean? How do I apply it in everything I do? And I think, looking to the world for signals, like, the answers are everywhere. People have been building companies and ideas and achieving their dreams for years. It's not new. Like, it's actually centuries old, right? Like, down to creating a wheel, right? All the way up until now. Like, it's not new. And so you can find metaphors and lessons and how to apply it and figure out what it means to you. My favorite advice, I was getting certified to be a yoga instructor. Kind of every year I pick something new to tackle that's not the company, just to level up as a human. And the best advice in that moment was, keep what's useful, ditch the rest. And I apply that a lot. I'm like, okay, hey, I'm going to pour into you, or I'm going to give you my perspective. Whatever it resonates with you, hold that. And everything else, like, you only have so much space, throw it out, right? Like, ditch the rest.
So you tell your team that?
Oh,
too?
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, but I look for metaphors in the world in general. That's just how I think and how I am. And so the one with leadership and distributed power in particular, I think of the legitimate definition of distributed power, which, a generator. So I grew up in Michigan. Where did you grow up again, Jake?
Here.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So did you ever have, like, bad storms as a kid?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have a generator in your house?
No.
Okay. Lucky you.
I don't think so.
All right. So I grew up in the middle of the woods, and so there was, like, one gust of wind. This is after we moved out of Detroit. One gust of wind put the power out, right? And we couldn't afford a generator for a long time. And I remember the summer we got the generator, and it was like, oh my God, our world's changed. Because when our power went out, it wouldn't be out for like a day, it'd be out for like 10, right? And we're on well water, so that meant no water, no flushing toilets, no this, no that,
Wow.
And so you just kind of camped for 10 days. Yeah, it was a special experience. But the point of a generator, when you get one, it actually kicks on before the storm happens. And so mechanically, all of a sudden you'll hear the house kind of hum, and there's no storm, and you're like, oh, okay, cool, the generator is being tested. That's great. Now, why would you test a generator when the storm isn't there? You test it because you want it to work when things hit the fan, right? So when I look at distributed power in particular, it harnesses energy that might otherwise be wasted. Like, the literal definition of distributed power in a generator is that it harnesses energy that otherwise might be wasted. And so in a company, for me, in my world, I'm like, okay, well, I want to give the team things that I can test now. I want to kick the generator on before the storm happens, so that when the storm is there and when things really hit the fan, they're able to deliver that. I don't want to waste energy by having everything very disparate and then, oh, the storm's here, everybody hands on deck, go, and expect them to execute perfectly. That's insane, right? Like, that's literally insane to me. So I look to the world a lot mechanically. I like a lot of engineering and things like that, and look at how things actually work and then what it means for business. And that's just because that's how I learn best, and that's just what I know.
To me, that seems like an incredible way to motivate your employees. And what better way to let your team know that you respect them and trust them than by giving them projects, right? Like, to test them and make sure that they're capable and helping them to grow, even before, like you said, before things hit the fan, right? So like, you're continually, sounds like, testing them, but giving them responsibility to take on new projects and maybe even stretch themselves at times. Like, I think that's so motivating in itself. And I think that's a lot of times all people really want out of a job, right? Yeah. In addition to some basics, you really need a sense of purpose. And it sounds like you're delivering that sense of purpose, not only through the work, because you guys are mission oriented and you do incredible things, but also you're providing your team with a sense of purpose by stretching them with projects to test them. And
I think the thing that surprises my team the most, kind of a misconception about me as a leader, my brain works very quickly, and I can run through about 7 scenarios pretty fast knowing what the data is. I always make decisions off data and not just a gut feeling. Deming, there's this great Deming quote that says, in God we trust, all others must bring data. And it was hanging outside the Secretary of Defense's door when I worked for him. And I was like, yes. And I didn't know how important that was because I didn't know how to apply it yet. But in business, you have no choice to look at numbers when you're trying to scale. And I think the thing that surprises my team most, when I ask a question, I genuinely don't know the answer. And a lot of them think I know the answer. Well, Joy's just asked me that because she thinks like she already knows that she's going to make this choice. Why would I ask a question then? I don't ask a question for the sake of, just going through the song and dance. It's because I genuinely want to know what they think. And I really can be persuaded to turn left instead of right, just like on the corner in the west side of Chicago, making the choice between Melly and Artopolis, right? Like everything about me as a leader takes me back to that moment, and I genuinely will listen to the people that work with me, that are helping me build the company, that have different life perspective, because everybody does, right? To persuade myself and the partners to make a different choice if it's backed up by critical thought and a little bit of data, and some empathy.
Do you ever have days where you wake up and you don't feel like leading the team at Boone?
I think to answer your question explicitly and quickly with brevity, no. I think that there's days where I feel sharper than others, for sure. This morning was one of them. Probably because I was excited that I got to talk to you, right? So there's days that I feel a little bit sharper and like really, really clear vision. Like we're running at 120, and my team will feel it. The fish rots from the head, meaning the team will take on the energy of the people at the top always. And so I think that, no, there's never a day where I'm like, I don't feel like leading today. That's not an option for me.
Yeah.
And because it's not an option, it doesn't become a blocker. I think when you make things an option and you make it optional to go forward or stay stagnant, then you can find excuses of why something's not working. So by just taking that option out, yeah, I have this is in a bookmark. It's a little sticker. It says, no one is coming. It's up to us. Right. And it reminds me, if not, somebody told me before I started the company, if not you, then who? If not now, when? And I was like, got it. Game on. Right. So no, there's not a day that I don't feel like leading. Are there days that I'm probably more inspirational and hands-on and rah-rah? For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But to me, leadership isn't cheerleading. That's one part of it, is to be a chief encouragement officer. But leadership isn't cheerleading. And so you can lead no matter how, crazy your allergies are or how tired you are or exhausted you are, by showing up and doing the job. And when you execute, everybody has a different leadership style. It doesn't have to be overt and explicit and all these things. If you lead by just being demonstrative in your work, that would never be a problem for you. Just period. It wouldn't. But there's definitely days I feel sharper than others, for sure, right? More rested, ready to tackle it, or I'm like, ooh, give me the toughest challenge. Let's go. Everybody in the war room, figure it out.
Yeah.
And then there's days where I'm like, I need everybody to leave me alone because I actually need think time, right? So yeah, so it just, I appreciate the question though. I think it's easy to say, yes, of course, or no, I always want to lead and I'm perfect. I am not perfect. There's days where I'm like, whew, this is going to be a doozy. It's going to be challenging. But I don't have an option to not want to do that because I chose this for myself. Right. And I think that I mentioned to you, I'm training for a charity boxing fight right now, and nothing.
Oh yeah, Joy's a boxer, by the way. First time I met her, she had a cracked rib. So
August 17th.
Yeah.
So nothing humbles you more than getting punched in the face.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you're there. I still remember the first time it happened. So I'm staying there, and you touch gloves, and then I'm like, okay, you've got headgear on, mouth gear, all that, and I went in. And then I didn't do anything. I just stood in the ready stance and, came right here, just bop. And I just dropped my hands and stood there. Right. So Joy, what are you doing? Put your hands up, move your head, girl, da 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 da. Right. And I just stood there. And then Ishle, this person I was sparring, she's fantastic, black belt, really talented. And she was going light on me. Right. It was a learning experience for me. Just bop, 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 one more. Right. My little head does this. And I'm just standing there and Joy, you chose to be in a fight. You can't be mad or stunned that you're here. You chose this, you're in it, hands up, go. And I was like, whew, got it. Okay. And then I learned how to fight, right? But it was a very, very intentional choice. And it wasn't until somebody was like, no, you chose this. Like, you can't be mad, sad, frustrated, tired, don't feel like it. Like, you stepped in the ring. So hands up or not. So I chose to lead a company, right? I chose to build it. I chose to bring some of the most talented people I've ever seen in my life around together to achieve an outcome. And so, you know, the option for me to get up and not feel like it is a disservice to them.
Wow. Yeah, that's really great.
But also, nothing humbles you more than getting punched in the face, so that helps too.
Yeah.
That brings me back to reality, you know?
Yeah.
So.
And it's cool that there's the tie to your hobby as well. Like, what you're doing outside of off the court affects how you perform on the court too,
100%.
right? And
100%.
Yeah. So even off the court, outside of Boone, you're pushing your limits, your personal limits.
Have to.
You're taking punches.
Have to.
And you're learning from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have
it's
to.
Fantastic.
Have to.
Yeah, you've got an incredible story that I definitely feel inspired by.
Good.
And I hope the people that are listening and watching also feel the same way. I mean, you have a ton of wisdom and a lot of really great experience that you bring to the table. And I think the people that work at Boone are super fortunate to have you as a leader.
Thank you.
And yeah, absolutely. It's been awesome. And I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down, and thank you, and wish nothing but the best for Boone Group.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Is there a place where people can get in touch with you or like connect with you after this?
Yeah, absolutely. On Instagram, I'm at JoyAnge, JoyAnge, or our website is boone.group.
Boone.group.
Yep.
Cool.
Nice and easy.
Yeah, I'd encourage you guys to follow Joy on Instagram. She posts a lot of inspirational content. And check out Boone Group as well. Her company is fantastic, and some of the things they're doing, I can't even comprehend. But I know that they're making an impact in our world. So hope you guys enjoyed it. And thanks again, Joy. Appreciate it.
Thank you.